buddy. So this morning, I want to talk about three men who really changed the way we do church. And if it weren't for these three guys and what they stood up for, we probably wouldn't be meeting today as a church. Um, the decisions that they made and what they said, every time we ignore it, really leads to a bad church experience. And so I just want to take a brief look at those three guys, what they said in the Bible, and then how we can live that out here as a church. I was reading online, there's this thing called Reddit, and I'm old, so I don't know these new hip things. I need Pastor Josh to tell me what's cool. But anyways, there's this thing called Reddit, and people post things on there, and I found one about bad church experiences, and it was amazing. Some of them, people were really superficial. Like one person put, I didn't agree with the church's architecture, and they left and never came back. And another person, everybody was talking during the message and not showing respect, and they left and never came back. But then there were some absolute horror stories. This one happened in a church in England. A first-time visitor shows up, and the finance director of the church gets up in front of everybody and starts to berate the audience for about 10 minutes about how you're not giving enough in the offering and where's your faith and where's your commitment to the church, and just going on for 10 minutes, making everybody feel bad. And then they pull out a list. And it's got the names of families that gave under a certain amount, and this finance director starts to read those names out in front of everybody. And then they start to berate those. It gets worse. They start to berate those people saying, where's your faith? Where's your commitment? I question your... And so that person was like, that church is crazy. I'm never going back there again. And I bet you a whole bunch of families that day never came back. Another person posted how they went to a church and the pastor spoke for 2 hours. That's bad enough in and of itself. You know, we tease Pastor Barry about, when he goes like 35, 40 minutes. But, I mean, this guy spoke for 2 hours about the upcoming election. And he said there's one candidate that's God's choice for America. And the other candidate is Satan's instrument to destroy America. And went on and on about that. And, well, this first-time visitor, guess what? They supported Satan's choice, according to this pastor. And that person left and never came back to church again. And then there was a person that showed up at a church, and the church had a guest speaker. And this guest speaker was explaining that the earth is only 6,000 years old, according to the Bible. And if you have any other viewpoint other than that, well, you can't even call yourself a Christian and believe anything else. And they went on and on about how science is made to distract us and pull us away from the Bible, and how scientists are just, they're used by Satan to confuse Christians. And this first-time visitor, you guessed it, was a scientist. And they never showed back up to church again. My mom had a really bad church experience. We had just accepted Jesus. This was back in the late 70s, and she's looking for a new church to go to. And she pulls into this one church, and she just felt drawn there. Like she would say, God told me to pull into this church parking lot and go into this building. And she walks in, and there's a room full of men. And my mom was a really good Catholic girl, and so being in a room full of men freaked her out. One guy came up and said, hey, I think you're looking for the women's meeting. And my mom was like, yeah, sure. So he takes her down the hallway to this room full of women, and they embraced her. They prayed for my mom, welcomed her. She walked out of there just feeling so amazing. And then as she's making her way out of the church, the gentleman that had escorted her was an usher of the church. He pulls her aside and whispers very gently into my mother's ear, don't ever wear that outfit again if you come into this building. And my mom was horrified. I mean, my mom is conservative. She's like wearing layers of clothes, okay? There's nothing showing, nothing being revealed. She was horrified, and this usher went on to say, the pattern on your outfit is not appropriate to wear into a church building. And this evil pattern that my mom was wearing is called paisley. Apparently God has something against paisley, according to this usher. And so my mom, she left sobbing, drove home sobbing, embarrassed. That was a bad church experience. And what happens so often are people come to church and they're seeking and they're looking and they're trying to connect to God. And we as churches sometimes do things that block people from even listening. It's like I said last week, sometimes a bad church experience often equals a bad God experience. If you don't think the way I think, and if you don't believe the way I believe, and if you don't vote the way I vote, and dress the way I think you should dress, then you don't belong in this church, and ultimately, you don't belong to God. Listen, you don't have to agree with my politics to get to God. You don't have to believe in my views of science and technology and all of that to get to Jesus. You don't even have to agree with me that Star Wars is way better than Star Trek, which, duh, it is. Duh. But so often we as churches, we put up barriers and we say, you've got to think like I think and vote like I vote, or you don't belong here. And you certainly don't belong to God. And I honestly believe that if Jesus died for all of humanity, and if this gospel is meant for everyone, then the church has to be a place that's for everyone. But and if that's true, why in the world would we create churches that block people and keep people away? So the church, right after Jesus died and he rose from the dead, the early church that formed, we talked about it last week, they were having some problems because there were different groups that were forming, and they each thought they were right, and they each thought their way to getting God was correct. You had people who used to be Jewish and now became Christians. And these Jewish Christians believed that you've got to follow all of our customs and all of our traditions in order to call yourself a Christian. So one of those traditions was circumcision. So they believed every man that wanted to follow Christ had to be circumcised. So it was basically like at the end of service, all right, you've prayed, you filled out your connection card, you asked Jesus into your heart. Now we need all the men to stand. Meet us in this room. We've got the knife ready. Like, wait, what? And so they were fighting about that. And then you had everybody else. And the Jewish Christians called everybody else Gentiles. And then you had all these different worldviews and religions, and they were trying to insert their culture and tradition into following Christ. So they wanted to be able to obviously not follow the Jewish traditions, but these guys, they still wanted to be able to go to the market and buy meat that had been used in a ritual to a false god. They still wanted to be able to go to the temple and sleep with the temple prostitutes. And they certainly didn't want these bossy Jewish Christians telling them what to do. And there was fighting and division, and one side thought it was right, the other sides thought they were right. The church was fracturing. It was a mess. Kind of sounds a little bit like the church in America today. Everybody thought they were right and did what they thought was right. But then 3 men stood up and changed the way everything happened from there on out. And the first person I want to look at this morning his name is James, and he's the brother of Jesus. Now imagine growing up with Jesus. Like he's going around telling people he's the Messiah, and people come up to James and say, hey man, your brother, he's saying he's the Messiah. And James is like, what? No. Jesus, you're telling people you're the Messiah? Shut up. You're my annoying brother. No, you're not the Messiah. Okay? No, you're just my brother. And then Jesus dies, and he raises from the dead, and he comes and has a conversation with James. And James believed. Okay, your brother, he dies, he comes back from the dead. You're going to listen to him, okay? I'm sure James was like, Jesus, I'm so sorry, man. I gave you all those wedgies as you were a kid. I'm sorry for all the times I picked on you, and you were so nice to me. Man, I missed it. I'm so wrong. I'm so sorry. But James now, he believes, and he became a church father. And there was this council in the book of Acts, chapter 15, all this fighting and all these different viewpoints, it caused the church fathers to gather together and have a meeting about this. And each side presented what they thought their side was, their point of view was. The Gentiles were there, the Jewish Christians were there. Everybody presented and they prayed. And then James, the brother of Jesus, stands up and he makes a statement that still just hits me today. It's so powerful. He says in Acts chapter 15, verse 19, it's my judgment. After listening to everybody, it's my judgment that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. James is saying, let's not create a church that blocks people. Let's not allow our personal culture, our personal worldview, who we're voting for, to block people from coming to Jesus. And it was that statement that changed the church and allowed God to move. And you read in the very next chapter that the Roman government is hunting down Christians. It's against the law to be a Christian. And under that persecution, the church grew and people were added. And they changed the world. And it's because they made that decision. What a powerful statement. You know, there's been so many churches this week. Here I go off my notes. There have been so many churches this week. Hang on. That I've seen them post more about Pokemon Go and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton than anything else. And when you make a statement like that and when you make a stand like that, you're basically saying, if you don't believe me, if you don't agree with me, then you don't belong here. Let's just start with Jesus. Let's just start there. Let's just start with the good news of the gospel. Let's put all that kind of stuff aside and let's just start with Jesus. And then let's allow the Holy Spirit to do his work. And I'm going to get to why churches should stand up for things and say things. I'm going to address that. But man, let's just start with Jesus. And you know what? Paul, the next guy that we're going to talk about, he says it so brilliantly in 1 Corinthians 5:12. He says, "What business is it of mine to judge those outside of the church?" What business is it of mine to judge those outside of the church? In the Romero household, and my son here, Marcus, he can tell you, in the Romero household, he just started listening. No, in the Romero household, if you want to play your little electronic or device or whatever, you've got to get your homework done first. That's the rule. Don't even pick up your little, I bought them cheap tablets, 2 for $1. It was real cheap. But don't pick up your little tablet and start Minecrafting or whatever until your homework gets done. Now, I'm not going to go into your house and into your family and make sure your kids are getting their homework done before they play. Because you're not a Romero. That's not your rules. Why would I come into your house and impose your rules? You're not a part of our family. So why do we expect people outside of this family to act, to think, to vote, to legislate the way we think should happen in this family? What business is it of ours? Listen, this upcoming election, we get so caught up in who's going to get elected, and voting is so important. I'm not saying don't vote. Pray about it, seek God, go vote. But listen, God's not up on the throne saying, man, I hope they pick the person I'm wanting. Boy, I hope my choice gets picked, because if they don't pick who I pick, then, man, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do in America. He's not saying that. God is sovereign. He's in control. Read the Bible. God used wicked rulers and righteous rulers. His will gets done. So let's not block people because they vote differently. If you're a Republican, you can come to church here. It's awesome. If you're a Democrat, you are welcome here. And of course, we love our libertarians at the back row there. We love you. Let's not block people. Let's not make it hard for people to turn to God. Let's just start with Jesus. The second person, I already mentioned him, his name's Paul. He wrote a letter to the church in Rome, and this church was a mess in Rome. If you ever read the book of Romans, it's a letter to the church in Rome. Those guys were a mess, and they were fighting, and they were saying, we've got it right. No, we've got it right. And they're fractured, and they're arguing, and they're all fighting each other. And Paul writes to them, and he says in Romans 3, verse 22, this righteousness. And when you see righteousness, that means this ability to get right with God comes through faith in Jesus Christ to all who behave. This righteousness comes to all who behave. That's not what it says in your Bible? Well, of course not. That's not what it says. But isn't that how we operate? Boy, you got to behave first if you want to be a part of this. You want to get this right, you got to behave. On the way home from church last week, one of my kids said, Dad, I really hope when I die I go to heaven. And I was like, why? Why do you have to hope that? You're a pastor's kid, man. You're making me look at it. Why don't you just know this already? And they said, well, Dad, we want to make sure that we don't do enough bad things to keep us out of heaven. We're afraid that we're not going to do enough good things to get into heaven. And I said, guys, no. And I brought this verse up, and I did it correctly. You'd be proud of me. I said, no, guys, the Bible tells us in Romans 3:22 that this righteousness, being made right with God, comes through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. It's not about what you do. You can't behave your way into a good relationship with God. It's all about your heart. And then my son, Ben, who's going to be a lawyer someday, he says, well, if I believe, then does it matter how I act? Because if I believe in God, can I just go out and do whatever I want? And I said, no, no. Because when you believe it and when it becomes the center of your life, it changes how you behave. It changes you from the inside out. Paul says that, and Paul goes on to say, listen, guys, there is no difference. What do you mean there's no difference, Paul? The Jewish Christians are fighting, and the Republicans and the Democrats are fighting, and the Libertarians are laughing, saying you're both wrong. And I mean, it's just a mess here in the church. What do you mean there's no difference? There are tons of differences. And Paul says, no, there's no difference. Because all have sinned, and all fall short of the glory of God. All of us. The glory of God, what does that mean? That means God's perfection. All of us come short of it. All of us have fallen short of it. When I was in elementary school, our class, it was getting near summer, and it was the last class of the day, and you know how you are, man. You're ready to get out and play, and we're going crazy, going rowdy, and the teacher's trying to get control, and finally she did what back in those days, back in the 80s, actually worked. The teacher said, all right, that's it. Everybody, heads down on your desks. And we hated that. So we all put our head down on the desk. We have to keep quiet. She goes, you need your heads down on the desk for 5 minutes, no noise. Well, of course, like 30 seconds go by and somebody giggles or starts talking, and the teacher kept adding time to it. Well, it's getting close to the end of class. We're almost done with our time. The bell is just about getting ready to ring, and the class clown, it wasn't me, the class clown decided at that moment to, how do I say this in church, expel gas in class, and the whole class just bursts out laughing. We are cracking up laughing. The teacher says, 5 more minutes, heads down, and then the bell rang. So we all got up, getting ready to leave, and the teacher said, no. You owe me 5 minutes. Heads down on your desk for 5 minutes. Come on. So we put our heads down. 5 minutes go by. Then the teacher says, all right, you can go, and I go run into my locker. And then, of course, I get in trouble for running in the hallway, and they do that annoying thing where they tell you have to go back and now walk, Marcus, walk to your locker. So you go back. I went back and walked, got to my locker, start to run to the bus. I got in trouble again. It's like a bad dream, okay? The teacher said, go back to your locker and walk. And so, you do that little fast walk where you're not quite running, but you're going fast enough to not get in trouble. And I get outside, I go running, and there's the bus, my bus pulling off. I go running after it, waving my arms, get to the edge of the sidewalk, and I'm just trying to get the bus driver's attention, and she's pulling off. Well, about 10 seconds later, a couple of other students come behind me. See, I was only like 1 or 2 seconds late, but these guys, these jokers, they were like 10, 15 seconds late. And, about 20 seconds in, there's about 3 or 4 of us standing, and the bus is pulling off. Now, I was only like 1 or 2 seconds late. These guys were much later than I was. Guess who made it onto the bus that day? None of us. None of us made it onto the bus because we all fell short of the glory of Mrs. Floyd, the bus driver, that way, okay? There was no hope for any of us, and she pulled off. And the Bible's saying the same thing, and right here, Paul's saying the same thing. Listen, I may be a few seconds late. You might be 30 seconds late. You know what? You might be so bad that you're still in the classroom with your head down on the desk, waiting to get out of the classroom. But we're all late. We're all late to the bus. And then Paul goes on to say this. He says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely. All are justified freely. It's free because you can't behave your way into this. And we are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Jesus Christ. So we all started in the same place. The bus is pulling away. We're all late. And then Paul says, now that we understand that we're all late, none of us made it on, who here can boast? Who here can boast and say, well, I was only a few seconds late, but those jokers, they're still in the classroom. Who can say, I've got it right, I've got it all figured out? Paul says, there's no boasting. In fact, he says, it is excluded. There's no boasting here. So understand this, if we all miss the bus, but the good news of the gospel is that Jesus signaled the bus driver and said, hey, stop, let them on. I know they're late. Oh, they're all late. Let them onto the bus. And that's the good news, is that the door has been opened for all of us. And if we're all equal in that we need a Savior, and we all need Jesus, then the church needs to be a place where everyone can come and be welcome to hear that. Because if the good news is for everyone, then the church has to be for everyone. And third and finally, the last person I want to look at this morning, just briefly, is Peter. Peter was a follower of Christ. And Peter, in Acts chapter 10, boy, he didn't get this right. He was a Jewish Christian. He believed that you've got to follow all of my traditions before, we'll let you into this whole Christian thing. And that was easy for Peter to say because he'd been circumcised as a baby. But then in verse 9, God gave Peter a vision. And this big sheet falls down right in front of him. And it's filled with all kinds of animals that were, according to his tradition, impure, unclean. Couldn't eat them. Couldn't even touch them. And a voice comes, and it says in verse 13, Acts 13, my favorite verse in the Bible, it says, Peter, rise, kill, and eat. Score one for bacon. And Peter says, God, no way. I can't eat these things. These animals, they're unclean. They're impure. I can't even touch them. And then God says something to Peter so powerful. He says, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. And this vision, it happens 3 times. And as Peter's trying to think through this vision and understand what it means, there's a knock on the door. And he opens it up, and it's these Gentiles. It's these guys he's been fighting with. It's these guys, man, they just want to do their own thing, and they don't follow my traditions. I'm not even supposed to be around these guys. And they said, Peter, we beg you, we had a vision. Come to our house. Tell us about this Jesus. We want to know more. And Peter agrees to go. And in Acts 10, verse 27, Peter enters the house, and it is packed with Gentiles. It's packed with people he's not supposed to agree with. And he starts by saying this. He says, you are well aware that it's against our law for a Jew to associate with a Gentile or visit him. Basically, he's saying my culture and my upbringing is telling me I'm not supposed to even be in the room with you guys. That'd be like starting the church saying, attention all Republicans. My culture tells me that, and my beliefs tell me that you're not even supposed to be in here. Attention all Democrats. I'm not even sure you're a Christian if you're here. Imagine starting church that way. That's basically what Paul said. But then he says something amazing. He says, but God has shown me that I should not call any man impure or unclean. Just look at that response. Peter says, God showed me something. I was wrong. And the way I viewed you was wrong. I looked at you and I thought, you're my enemy. I looked at you and I thought you were beneath me. And I was wrong. And then Peter begins to share about Jesus. And he talks about, and he talks to them about the love of Christ. And they get saved, and the Holy Spirit comes down and fills them. It was amazing. And in the next chapters, when we read that the church began to expand and grow, and it was this meeting right here Peter had, this thing that Peter said that sparked the council that we talked about with James. It was because of this meeting here that sparked what James stood up and said. Now, there's a certain kind of church, and it's called seeker sensitive. And it's basically a church that, we're going to avoid talking about things that offend people. We're going to avoid those kinds of things, and we're not going to use certain passages in the Bible because we don't want to offend people. That's not who we are here at The Sound, and that's not who we're ever going to be. Honestly, if you're here this morning and you're seeking, you don't know about this whole Jesus thing, you're not buying into this. If you're going to get offended by something at this church, I don't ever want it to be because of my politics. And I don't ever want it to be because of my traditions or what I view on science or anything like that. If you're going to be offended here by one thing, I pray the only thing you get offended by is this: that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That we all need a Savior. That I was lost. The direction I was heading, I was screwing my life up. But Jesus came into my life. I invited him in, and he saved me. He changed me. He saved my family. And if he did it for me, he can do it for you. If you're going to be offended, I want you to only be offended because we're telling you, you need Jesus in your life. You need him. That's why we started The Sound. That was Pastor Barry's vision in starting this church, to be a place that's obstacle-free for people trying to find Jesus. And we need your help, Sound Church, to keep us obstacle-free. We need your help to spread this good news that is for everyone. So this needs to be a church that is for everyone. Now listen, we're going to be very honest and clear about things that are sin. We're going to warn you about things that need to be warned about. We're not going to be able to be afraid to call sin, sin, and call things that are wrong, wrong. We're never going to be afraid to do that. In fact, we've addressed some things. If you look at our sermon archive, you can see we've addressed issues and things in culture that are wrong. We're never going to be afraid to tell you the truth. However, we're also going to point to Jesus and say that this in culture is wrong, but you know what? We need Jesus. All of us do. We all need a Savior. And the power of the cross, we're going to tell you, it's for everyone. Even Pokemon Go users. It's for everyone. And we want Jesus to start a work in your life to change you. He loves you enough to not leave you the same. He did it for me. He can do it for you. So if you've ever come to a church and you felt excluded and you felt left out and you felt blocked because of how you looked, how you dressed, how you voted, or what you believed other than Jesus, then I'm here to tell you we got it wrong, and I'm sorry. That's not the way it's supposed to be. The message of Jesus Christ is for all people, including you, and it's a message of hope that Jesus can come to you exactly as you are. You don't have to get your life straightened out and then come to God. God accepts you exactly as you are. Guess what? You missed the bus. That's the bad news. The good news is that Jesus said, let him on. And he let me on, and he can let you on. And if you're here and you're part of the Sound Church, you're part of the family, then I want you to do exactly what Peter did. God, show me. God, show me when I've looked at people and have thought they're impure, they're unclean. God, show me in my heart where I've allowed my traditions and my culture and my worldview to block people from coming to you, and change my heart. I want to see people the way you see them, with love and compassion. And that, church, is how the church in the first century changed the world. They understood that this gospel is for all people, and they took it to all people. And Sound Church, that's what's going to change the world right here in Northern Virginia. When we embrace this and when we say this message of the good news of Jesus Christ is for everyone. And that's when God's going to trust us to bring everyone through these doors. And that's what's going to change the world. So let's go tell them. Let's go tell them. Let's pray. Jesus, I thank you for your word that challenges us to not stay the same and not be comfortable. But you challenge us to grow. And God, I pray for those here this morning that are seeking, that are looking to you. God, I pray that, first of all, they would realize that they need you. And it's not by behavior and it's not by what we do that makes us right with you. It's our hearts. And God, I pray for those here this morning, God, that have been coming. They're a part of your family. And I include myself, Lord. Help me to change the way I view people. Help me to change my perspective, to see people the way you see them. So with every head bowed, every eye closed, nobody looking around, I want to challenge you this morning. If you're here and you look at your life and you say, you know what? The life I've been living is not right. And I need Jesus. And I've been hesitant because I wasn't sure I would be accepted. And I've been hesitant because if people see me as I really am, then this church, no way they would embrace me. I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. And if you're here this morning and you're saying, Mark, you're right. I missed the bus. I've messed my life up. I'm not living the way I'm supposed to be. I've made a mess. I don't know what to do anymore. I need Jesus. I need him to come into my life and to change me and to make me into who he wants me to be. If that's you this morning, I want to pray for you. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to make you stand up. We're not going to put you on the spot, but I want to include you in a final prayer. Maybe this is the first time you've prayed this, or you know what, maybe this is the first time in a very long time, but you're ready to give your life to Christ. You're ready to surrender to him and say, God, I trust you. I love you. I need you. If that's you this morning, with nobody else looking around, all I want you to do is raise your hand about shoulder high, and I'll include you in a final prayer. Maybe this is the first time you've ever done this. Maybe it's been a really long time, but you're here to get your life back. You're here to get your life back with Christ. Thank you. Is there anybody else this morning? Jesus, I need you. I've messed up the way I've been living, and I can't do this without you. Anybody else? Yeah, thank you. And then for the rest of you, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to do exactly what Peter did and say, God, change my heart. There are people groups. There are people in this society I've looked at and I've called them in my heart impure and unclean. There are people that I've looked at and said, they're beneath me. And I was wrong. God, I want to see people the way you see them. Change my heart. That's you. I want you to just pray that right now. God, change my heart. Help me to see people the way you see them. Lord, you saw those that raised their hand. You see those who need to work in their heart. Lord, I pray you make this body, this church, more like you. And God, help this church, help the Sound to be a place that's open to everyone, because we know the good news of the gospel is for everyone. Help us to change this world for you. We ask this in your precious name. Amen.